Story 1. Parents abandoned me after their divorce. Years later, I inherited $1 million from my grandpa. Suddenly, they're back in my life demanding money for my half-siblings and dad's debts. I, 21M, have been abandoned by my family when I was around 12. You see, my parents got separated when I was 11. Took me by surprise because it seemed all fine between them. One fine day, they both sat me down and said they were getting divorced. I thought this to be a prank because I had different notions about divorce. I heard from my friends that when their parents got divorced, there was at least a year-long fight and yelling. In my case, it was a silent divorce. They said they both liked someone else. Mom would be moving out with her new boyfriend, while Dad's mistress would move into our house. They would have joined custody of me since both Mom and Dad would be put up 2 miles apart. I could shuffle between them weekly. I didn't know what to say. Rather, I didn't have any say in that. My family was splitting apart, and all I could do was sit and sob. My parents assured me that I would be their topmost priority. They both promised all sorts of things like getting me the latest video games, taking me on vacations, and getting me anything I wanted. I wish I could make them understand that I didn't want any of those things. I just wanted to live with them in the same house as a family. It was too tough for me to see Mom packing her stuff and leaving the house and watching Dad's mistress unloading her truck and setting my parents' bedroom as hers. Mom and Dad got separated on good terms. Stepmom had twin boys almost of the same age as mine. They both hated me in the same way I hated them. My mom's boyfriend had a daughter from his previous wife, but she was living with her mother. I thought of spending more time at Mom's, but soon after she moved out, she got pregnant with her boyfriend's baby, and it all got so weird and complicated. I felt like I was not welcome there. Mom's husband got uncomfortable to see me. They would get into PDAs in front of me, and I hated it. In my dad's house, I felt the same way because my stepmom and her sons hated me. So I started living more and more with my aunt, father's sister, who is also my godmother. She was 10 years older than my father. She was living alone, so I occasionally showed up at hers. After a year of shuffling between the 3 houses, I permanently moved in with my aunt. It took more than 3 months for my parents to realize that I had moved in with Aunt. Mom thought I was at Dad's and Dad thought I was at Mom's. They didn't bother to check on me during this period. They both were so busy with their new family that they forgot I existed. My aunt was a real savior. She made me feel loved and wanted. She would take me out for dinners and movies. I used to tag along with her for vacations during summer. We used to visit Grandpa at his farm in the countryside. It was fun living with her initially. Dad used to send my monthly allowance to Aunt, but eventually he started defaulting on that. Sometimes Aunt used to remind them and sometimes she would let it slide. I felt bad for piling up on her, so I started working for her and earned my living. She had a plant nursery. I worked there after my school. I also helped her in household chores, taking out the trash and even running groceries for her. It was fun living with her. Meanwhile, my parents forgot they have a son. They even forgot my birthdays. Only when Aunt reminded them, they would call and say they loved me so much. Sometimes, I heard Aunt calling and informing them that I was sick, but none of them showed up. Even on my school's graduation day, none of them showed up. It was my aunt who was there to cheer me up. When Aunt called them to school about their negligence, they would call me and apologize to me. I grew so resentful of them that I stopped answering their calls. Eventually, they stopped calling me. They would now lay the blame on me that I had grown rude and was not answering their calls. I said, if you guys want to have a blame game, so be it. I'm not going to let that affect me. I don't want you guys in my life. After school, I went to uni and moved out from Aunt's place. I still visit her every few months. I ensure to show up at her birthdays and holidays because she has also gotten attached to me in all these years. I am in my final year at uni. 3 months back, my grandpa, father's side, passed away. It was a terrible moment for both me and my aunt. We both were closest to him. Dad and my other uncles barely visited him. The irony is they all turned up for his funeral and at the lawyer's office to see his will. Unfortunately for them, Grandpa gave all his belongings to Aunt. His 150-acre farmland, the farmhouse, and $1 million cash. The remaining money he gave off to the charity. That was brutal, but if you know his side of the story, it would make sense. I'll write about it another thread. Briefly understand that Grandpa was ill for a long time, and he wanted to meet his sons. Despite Aunt requesting her brothers to visit Grandpa, none of them showed up and shifted with him in his final days to take care of him. I had moved out for my uni by then. After getting the possessions of the property, Aunt called me home. Her house is what I call home. She told me she would be giving me the $1 million Grandpa had left for her. The happiness I felt was beyond words. Not because she gave me the money, yeah, somewhat, but moreover to think that she cared for me so much when I was living with her. I used to rant about how I wanted to start my own company, hire employees, and so on. She gave me the money and asked me to use that for my dream venture. I just hugged her and cried. If not for her, my life would have been miserable. It didn't take enough time for this news to reach my parents. Bam! They suddenly started showering me with their unconditional love. They started calling and checking on me. I asked them to back off. I don't want you guys back in my life. Last week, Dad showed up at my dorm. Of course, he got the address from my aunt. I bet none of them remember which uni I'm studying. He said he was so proud that I would be graduating this year, and after singing praises of me, he asked me why I was not visiting his home. I asked him, "When was the last time you called?" He stood silent and then said, "Oh, you're still mad at us for the divorce. Come on, move on. We both love you. Your mother also misses you. Let me drive you home. Then we all can have dinner together." I said, "Back off. The only family I have is my aunt. You both abandoned me long before, so quit showing off your fake love. I know why you are here. That $1 million brought you here, right?" He remained silent and said he had no ulterior motive except for love. He was here to say sorry and wants me back in his life. He said he heard my graduation was nearing. He was here to ensure that I invited them, unlike school graduation day when I didn't call either of them. I hated having any conversation with him, so I left him midway, saying I had a class. The same day, I got a voicemail from Mom, and she said she was expecting an invite for my graduation day. She said she and Dad couldn't attend uni, so they both always dreamed of me going to uni. Hence, she was very excited that I was able to cut through it. The thing is, I don't want either of them on my big day. I told my aunt about this, and she said it was up to me, but she suggested I reconcile with my parents. I don't know what to do. I also don't know if they are reconciling for money or if they are genuinely happy for me getting a uni degree. Update 1. Hello there. Sorry for the late update. Life has been busy. Good news. I have graduated from uni. I landed a job as well. Thank you. Well, let me start by answering some of the common questions I got in the comment. First was about my aunt. People asked me about her family and how she was able to accommodate me for so many years. I think I wrote in my initial post that my aunt is 10 years older than my dad. When I moved to her place, she was in her late 50s. She was single. Her husband died in an accident when I was tiny, maybe 1 or 2 years old. She has a daughter who had moved out in her teens for a medical school. She is a cardiologist now and is settled in the UK. So, Aunt has been living alone. She did date any men after her husband's demise. Her daughter and I tried to set her up with a few men, but she absolutely denied it. She said she loved her plants and was happy nursing them. Some of you said I was too harsh on my parents, that they have a right to get separated and remarry. You all are right. They do have the freedom to leave and choose their partner, but it is never justified to ignore your children after your new family comes into your life. My parents did the same. They neglected me for their new family. Initially, they said I would stay 1 week at Dad's and 1 week at Mom's. Though we were following this schedule, sometimes they would be like, "It's my time again to have you." Then they would always plan without me. Their dinner plan would always be after I left. They would even talk like this in front of me. "Oh, this name is here. Let's go out next week." How would you feel when your parents behave like this? I think I have spoken about Mom that within a few months of her moving in with her boyfriend, she got pregnant. They indulged in PDAs in front of me, which was unbearable. They once took me on a 2-day trip with them. They made me sit inside the room for the whole 2 days while they went outside sunbathing. When they were in the room, they would ask me to sit on the balcony outside. Though I was a kid, I knew exactly what was going on inside. I mean, I was 11. Besides, I could hear them doing gross, I know, and that man is not even your father. So, how do you expect me to stick around them? I stopped going to mom's after that. Dad was still better than mom. Sometimes, he tried to include me in the plans, but his stepsons would throw tantrums at him. Then he would say, okay, skip this one. Maybe next week, father and son could go fishing. That next week would never come because next week I would be at mom's. Soon, I realized that my parents had some sort of agreement that whenever they had to get rid of me, they would say, let's do it next week, and then next week I would be the other one's responsibility. Once, he was able to tag me along in their family vacation, and it was so horrible. First day, we all went out. His wife and her sons kept him busy, and I felt so much neglected. Even for the family pictures, they would ask me to take theirs. I was in none of the pictures with them. There were just 4 pictures of me. In 3 of them, I was alone, and in 1, it was with Dad. I guess now I've given enough context to people who have been here telling me that I was harsh on my parents. Anyways, talking about the current situation, like I said, my parents wanted me back in their life. They said it was because they wanted to be a part of my graduation day, and it was a proud moment for them. I said, I don't want you guys on my big day. Where were you guys during my high school graduation? Busy in your new family. That's right. When they persisted further, I said, okay, but I didn't invite them. I thought they would again reach out to me as the graduation day approached. I even got extra hall tickets for them in case they show up uninvited. But they didn't. They forgot about it and attended the convocation. I strictly asked her not to reveal the dates to my parents. It is almost a month now since my graduation day, but none of them called me to check for the dates. So, my graduation was just an excuse for them to have me back in their life. Update 2. Here's a new update. Almost 2.5 months after my graduation day, Mom called me and said my half-sister had graduated from primary school, and now they have put her in a private elementary school. However, they have a shortage of funds and they want me to pitch in. I was flabbergasted at her demand. When I asked why, she said she was my sister, so I should fund her education. She didn't waste any time in coming to the point. She said, we know that your aunt has given away her $1 million inheritance money to you. Of course you do, she continued. Your sister needs you. This is your time to step up as a big brother. I stopped her right there. Hello, delusional, you. I have never seen that sister you are talking about. Where were you when I needed my mom when I was sick and cold? You were nowhere. She started sobbing and said, what can I say if you are still stuck to the past? I thought you have a huge sum of money. What are you going to do with it? So, what's better than your sister getting educated in a private school? I wanted to say a lot, but I didn't. I said, I have plans for that money, and I cannot spare a penny to anyone else. She hung up the phone after that. She didn't even ask me about the graduation day. I was right. Their rekindled love was only for money. I was still processing it when one day I got a call from a bank. They wanted me to pay for my dad's defaulted mortgage. I asked, from where did they get my number? They said Dad gave it to them. Dad had taken a personal loan, and he didn't pay the mortgage for a few months. When they came hunting for him, he requested them to contact me because he had run out of money. To be honest, I panicked initially because I had no idea of how this process works. I got scared thinking maybe I was legally obligated to pay his debt since I was his son. Thankfully, I didn't succumb to the pressure and told them I needed to check with my dad first. Instead of talking to him first, I called up my lawyer friend. He wasn't a lawyer though. He was still in his final year of law school, but he knew the felonies quite well. He said, no, I was not legally bound. I asked him, then how come the bank called me for the money? He said, the recovery agent has the leverage to recover the amount from anyone who wants to pay on the loaner's behalf. But I can refuse at any time. I didn't call Dad after that. I knew he would plead with me to pay for his mortgage knowing it was not on me. I waited for the bank to call me again. They called after a week and asked when I would be giving them the money. The recovery agent has certain assertive tones to scare off people. I was intimidated by it the first time, but this time I charged at them. I said, who gave you the right to talk to me like this? Did I default on the mortgage? No, right? Then you better watch your tone, and I am not going to pay a penny. You can contact the person who defaulted and not me. They said sorry and hung up. I didn't need to school them yet. I deliberately did so that they could unleash their anger on the original defaulter, my dad. Couple of hours later, I got a call from Dad's wife. Sorry, I can't call her mom or even stepmom. She was yelling at me. She was asking what did I tell the recovery officers that they got so pissed off. They took Dad by his collar and asked him to pay the mortgage or else they would break his bones. I remained quiet and said, I just told them to chase the original loaner and not me. She screamed at me, don't you have any heart for your dad? He is struggling to pay the mortgage, and you are looking the other way despite having so much money with you. I said, yeah, I don't have any heart for him because he didn't have his for me. He has his heart for you and your boys. So why don't you guys chip in? I'm sure he would have taken that money for you people. She hung up after that. That same night, Dad called me. He was drunk, not angry. He was sobbing. He said he was sorry for his mistakes, that he didn't treat me right in front of his stepsons. He said several other things which basically implied how sorry he was, and he has realized his mistakes and wants to make things right. I said, I don't want to talk about my past, and I definitely don't want to have them back in my life. He said he was remorseful and pleaded that I forgive him. I said, sorry and remorse doesn't matter to me anymore. I have learned to live without them, and I would like to have it that way. I don't know if I did the right thing by denying him the money. I do feel bad that he was chased by the bank officials. I even think if all this is staged just to emotionally blackmail me for money because if he asked me directly, I would have refused it outrightly like I did to Mom. What do you guys think? Update 3. Thanks for the valuable comment. Some of you were right in saying that it wouldn't have hurt me to cover for his couple of months of mortgage. Even I thought so, but you know what? They don't deserve it, neither of them. After writing the last update, I felt so remorseful that I was about to call Dad and ask how much money he needed. But before that, I got a mail from Mom inviting me for dinner. It was written that, sorry, we couldn't make it to your graduation day, so I want to do this for you. Just 3 of us. Me, Dad, and you like old times. I was not so keen on reminiscing about the old family time. I accepted the invite, though I wanted to end the saga. I showed up. They were saying the same thing that Dad was saying the other day. Sorry, apologies, remorse, forgiveness, and getting back together as a family. I just played along, nodded, and smiled. I wanted to see where it goes. Out of nowhere, Mom goes, baby, we were wondering what plans you have for the money? I looked at her, and she said, no, I mean Dad and I could suggest you some good investment advice. You are pretty young to take this decision of your own. I casually said, yeah, and Aunt's name is helping me with that, so I'm good. Thanks. Silence prevailed for the next few minutes. She makes a comeback and says, you know, Dad has been in trouble because he defaulted on the mortgage. I said, I know, but Dad, why did you take that personal loan for business? He lowered his head and said, for his son's college. Before I could react to that, Mom said, doesn't matter, whatever could be the purpose. The question is, Dad's in trouble, and we have to help him. I was thinking, why don't you clear off his mortgage and his stepson would pay you back once they get the job, and the remaining money you can give it to me. You remember I said your half-sister needs to be put in a private school. She'll pay you back once she gets older and earns. I replied, how about we silently eat our dinner and call it a day? She lost her mind at my sarcastic reply and yelled that I was still that attention-seeking brat who only cared about himself. I said, yeah, that is what I am. I could have lectured them about their behavior, but who wants to waste time on them? I mean, they know I have an education loan to pay off, but still, they want me to give my money for my stepbrother's loan and my half-sister's private education and work hard to pay off my own loan. Wow. I said, I am done with you guys. I was right. You guys came back in my life only for money. And you know what? Suck it up. You don't get a penny. I left the table, leaving my share of the dinner bill on the table. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Man, you wouldn't believe the curveballs life threw at me. So there we were, a month into being parents, sleepless nights, endless diapers, and that baby smell, a mix of milk and, well, more bodily stuff. Life was a blur, but hey, I was a dad, and that was pretty cool. Then, one evening, out of the blue, my wife Jenna, she drops this bomb on me. We are doing the usual, sipping lukewarm coffee, half watching some show while the baby's finally snoozing. And she says, I think we should have an open marriage. I almost split my coffee. Come again? I asked, thinking I misheard over the baby monitor static. Nope, heard her right. Jenna, looking serious as a judge, repeats it. She wants an open marriage. Says she's been feeling different. Needs more than what we've got. It's not about love. She says, I just need to explore. Find myself. I'm sitting there trying to wrap my head around this. We've been the high school sweethearts, the perfect couple, and now this. I loved her, man. But this was a whole different ball game. Was it me? Was it the baby? Had I missed some signs? My mind was racing a mile a minute. I felt like someone had pulled the rug out from under me. Here I was, thinking we're settling into this new chapter as parents, and she's on a completely different page. I didn't even know what to say, so I didn't say much, just nodded, muttered something about needing to think. And think I did, all night, staring at the ceiling, Jenna asleep next to me as if she hadn't just turned our world upside down. The next few days were awkward. We were like those old sitcoms where the couple danced around the big elephant in the room. Except it wasn't funny. It was my life crumbling, and I had no idea what to do about it. But then things took another turn. Remember the neighbor I mentioned, Mr. Mysterious? Yeah, well, he's about to play a big part in this whole mess, but that's a story for another chapter. After that bombshell Jenna dropped on me, I was a mess. I needed to clear my head, so I started taking these long walks around the neighborhood. It was on one of these walks that I bumped into him, Mr. Mysterious, as I later dubbed him. This guy, he's lived a few doors down for years, but we never really talked, just the usual nods and morning greetings. But that day, he was outside tending to his roses. Yeah, roses, who knew? So I'm walking by, lost in my thoughts, and he calls out, "Tough times?" Huh. I'm taken aback. How does he know? I force a smile, thinking it's just neighborly small talk. But then he goes, "Marriage is like a rose garden, needs care or it withers." I stop in my tracks. It's like he's reading my mind. We get to talking, he's got this calm way about him. And before I know it, I'm spilling my guts, the open marriage request, my confusion, everything. He listens, just nodding, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he starts talking, giving me this advice, but it's all riddles and metaphors. He says things like, sometimes the path you're on needs a detour to get to where you really need to go. I'm like, what does that even mean? But the way he says it, so sure and wise, I can't help but ponder over his words. And get this, he knows stuff about me, little details, how I used to play guitar in college, my fear of heights, stuff I never told him. It's eerie, but also, I don't know, comforting, like he's been watching over me or something. Every day, I find myself drawn to those chats. He's always there, same time, same spot, like he's waiting for me. And every day, he drops these cryptic nuggets of wisdom. Look beyond the horizon of your troubles, he'd say. Or, the heart's compass rarely points in a straight line. I start looking forward to our talks. They're the only thing that makes sense in my topsy-turvy world. But it's weird, right? This near stranger suddenly becoming a confidant. Anyway, things at home are still strained. Jen is caught up in her new freedom, barely home. And here I am, finding solace and cryptic advice from a neighbor who knows too much. Life's strange, man. Well, they got me thinking maybe I didn't know Jenna as well as I thought. So I did what any confused husband would do. I turned detective. It started with small stuff, digging through old photo albums, reading her old diary. Yeah, I know, not cool. But man, I was desperate. Nothing much there, just typical teenage angst and stuff about her college days. But then I hit pay dirt. I found this box tucked away in the back of our closet. Inside there were letters, photos, stuff I'd never seen before. Pictures of Jenna with some guy looking cozy. Love letters not written by me. My heart's pounding as I'm reading these, feeling like a total idiot. Turns out this guy was Jenna's college sweetheart, someone she never mentioned. The letters were all lovey-dovey, full of plans for the future. The last letter, though, was different. The guy was moving away, wanted Jenna to come with him, but she didn't go. This got me thinking, What if Jenna's request for an open marriage wasn't about me? What if it was about this long-lost love? So I did more digging, social media stalking, talking to some of her old friends under the guise of planning a surprise party. Clever, right? And I start piecing together this other life Jenna had. One she buried when she married me. Turns out she never got over this guy. He was her what if. And then the kicker, he moved back to town recently. Bingo! It was like a puzzle coming together, but each piece was a punch in the gut. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was practically a stranger. I confronted her with what I found. She broke down, admitted everything, said she loved me, but always wondered what if. She thought an open marriage might let her explore these old feelings without losing me and our daughter. Man, talk about a gut-wrenching revelation. I was angry, hurt, lost, but at the same time it was like a weight lifted. I finally understood. It wasn't about me or us, it was about her unresolved past. So there I was, my marriage in shambles, my wife longing for another man, and through all this, Mr. Mysterious is still there, offering his cryptic advice. Sometimes the hardest paths lead to the brightest destinations, he'd say. I didn't know what my destination was anymore, but I knew I had a long, hard path ahead. Alright, so we're at the point where I've just uncovered all this stuff about Jenna and her past. My head's spinning, and I'm like a pot about to boil over. I had to confront her, get it all out in the open. So one evening, I wait for her to come home. She walks in, all tired from her day, and I'm just sitting there, this box of her past life on the table. Her eyes go wide when she sees it, and I can tell she knows what's coming. "What's this, Jenna?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She starts with the, "Oh, that's nothing," but I cut her off. "Don't," I say, "just don't." Then it all comes pouring out. She admits to everything, the old boyfriend, the letters, the feelings she never resolved. I'm sitting there listening to her spill secrets like they're confessions, and I'm trying to keep it together. It's like I'm hearing about a different person, not my Jenna. She's crying now, saying she never meant to hurt me. She just didn't know how to deal with these old feelings. "I thought I could have both," she says, "explore my past without losing my present." I'm torn. Man, part of me is furious, feeling betrayed. The other part, well, it kind of gets it. We've all got what-ifs, right? But acting on them, that's a whole other story. The air is thick with all this emotion, and I'm struggling to breathe. I tell her I need time. I need to figure out what all this means for us, for our family. She nods, tears streaming down her face, and I just walk out. I spend the night wandering the streets, lost in my thoughts. I end up at Mr. Mysterious' place, the only light on in the neighborhood. He's there, as if he's been waiting for me. I tell him everything, and he listens, that same calm look on his face. "Sometimes the heart needs to break to let the light in," he says. I'm not in the mood for riddles, but his words, they kind of make sense. I head back home as the sun's coming up, feeling exhausted but clearer. Jenny's there, asleep on the sofa, waiting for me. I don't wake her. I just watch her for a while, thinking about all we've been through. Man, life's complicated. Love's complicated. I thought I had it all figured out, but turns out I'm just as lost as anyone else. My late-night rose tending, cryptic advice-giving neighbor turns out he's more than just a guy with a green thumb and a knack for riddles. The day after that emotional showdown with Jenna, I'm back at Mr. Mysterious' place. We're sitting in his backyard, surrounded by those roses he cares for so much, and I'm pouring my heart out. I'm talking about Jenna, the open marriage thing, my feelings, the whole 9 yards. Out of nowhere, he goes, "I've been where you are." I look at him, really look at him for the first time. There's something familiar in his eyes, but I can't place it. He starts telling me his story, and dude, it's like listening to a mirror of my own. He loved and lost, been betrayed, gone through a rough patch, just like me, but he found a way to move on, found peace. How? I ask, desperate for some of that peace myself. He smiles, this sad but knowing smile, and says, by letting go, by understanding that some things are out of our control. Easy for him to say, right? But the way he says it, I believe him. Then he drops the bombshell. "I knew your father," he says. "My father, the man I barely remember, who passed away when I was just a kid." Turns out Mr. Mysterious and my dad were close friends, like brothers. He'd been keeping an eye on me, sort of watching over me from a distance ever since my dad died. Mind blown. It's like all the pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The familiarity, the knowing too much about me, the cryptic advice, it all makes sense now. This guy, he wasn't just a neighbor, he was a connection to my past, to my dad. We talk for hours. He tells me stories about my dad, stuff I never knew. It's like he's giving me a piece of my history back, filling in blanks I didn't even know were there. And his advice, it starts making more sense. He's not just spouting riddles, he's passing on wisdom, stuff he learned the hard way, stuff my dad would have wanted me to know. I leave his place feeling lighter than I have in weeks. It's not like all my problems have vanished, but I've got this new perspective, like I'm not alone in this. I've got this guardian angel, this link to my dad, looking out for me. Life's still messy, and Jen and we've got a long road ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can handle it, like I'm not just stumbling in the dark. After all those heart-to-hearts with Mr. Mysterious, or should I say my dad's old buddy, I'm seeing things a bit clearer. But while I'm finding some kind of peace, Jenna's world, it's starting to crumble. First, it's her job. She's been so caught up in this find herself quest that she's slacking at work. One day, she comes home, eyes red, and I know before she even says it, she's been fired. I'm not going to lie, part of me wants to say, told you so, but what good would that do? Then her friends start drifting away. Turns out this open marriage thing wasn't as cool with them as she thought. She's venting to me about it, and I'm just sitting there thinking, welcome to my world, Jenna. But the kicker comes when her old flame, Mr. What If, turns out to be a total jerk. He's not interested in rekindling old love. He's just looking for a fling. She's heartbroken, realizing she's thrown away so much for a fantasy. I watch all of this happen, and man, it's a roller coaster. I'm torn between feeling sorry for her and feeling like it's karma. She sees how much she's lost, and she's desperate to make things right. She starts talking about fixing our marriage, going to counseling, trying to be the family we were supposed to be. But I'm hesitant. Can you blame me after all that's happened? It's not easy to just open my arms and say, sure, let's start over. Mr. Mysterious, he's still there with his advice. People change, but so do feelings, he says. Think about what you want, not what you're supposed to want. Man, if that isn't the hardest advice to follow. I'm watching Jenna trying to pick up the pieces of her life, and it's like watching a movie. Part of me wants her to find her way back, but another part of me, the part that's been hurt and betrayed, isn't sure if that's what I want anymore. It's a mess, dude, a real mess. But life's like that sometimes, isn't it? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball. After all the drama, the heartache, and the revelations, I found myself at a crossroads. It was time to turn the page, start a new chapter, new beginnings and all that jazz. So here's the deal. Jenna and we tried to patch things up, but it was like trying to glue a broken vase back together. Sure, it kind of looks whole, but it's never the same. We decided to go our separate ways. Tough? Yeah. Necessary? Absolutely. But don't think it was all doom and gloom. Something good came out of this whole mess. Remember that colleague of mine, Sarah? We'd always been good friends, but in the midst of my turmoil, she was there for me, like a rock. We'd grab coffee, talk about everything and nothing. It was easy, no drama, no walking on eggshells. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was looking at her in a way I hadn't before. It wasn't just friendship anymore. There was something more. She felt it too. We took it slow at first, testing the waters, making sure it wasn't just a rebound thing. But dude, it was like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. With Sarah, I could be me, without any pretenses or masks. We laughed, shared stories, and yeah, fell for each other hard. It was nothing like what I had with Jenna. This was something real, something deep. And the best part, my little girl, she adores Sarah. They clicked from the get-go. Seeing them together, laughing and playing, it fills my heart in a way I can't even describe. I started rediscovering myself too. Picked up my guitar again. Started playing at this little bar on weekends. Felt good, getting back to my roots, doing what I love. Sarah was my biggest cheerleader, always front row, cheering me on. Life was good, man, really good. I was healing, finding joy in the simple things. My days with Jenna felt like a distant memory, a chapter from a book I'd long closed. Sure, there were challenges. Divorce is never easy, and co-parenting, that's a whole other ball game. But Sarah, she was with me every step of the way, supporting me, loving me. So yeah, new beginnings, it's not just a cliche, it's real. Life threw me a curveball, but I cut it and threw it right back. I found happiness, love, and a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Here we are at the end of the road of this wild story. Man, what a ride it's been. If you told me a year ago that I'd be where I am now, I'd have laughed in your face. But life, full of surprises. So I'm settled into this new life now, and let me tell you, it feels good. Really good. There's this lightness in my steps, a smile on my face most days. Sure, there's still the occasional rough patch, but nothing like before. Sarah and we're going strong. She's incredible, man, the kind of woman who makes you want to be a better man. And my daughter, she's growing up so fast, smart as a whip, and happy. Seeing her laugh, watching her play without a care in the world. It's everything to me. I've learned a lot, been through the ringer, you might say, but all that, the pain, the confusion, the heartache, it's made me who I am today, stronger, wiser, more appreciative of the good things in life. Looking back, I see all the moments that led me here, the hard conversations with Jenna, the late-night chats with Mr. Mysterious, the tears, the laughter, it's all part of my story. And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. Jenna and we're in a good place now, not like before, but it's respectful, friendly, even. We co-parent like champs, putting our daughter first. It's not the family I pictured, but it's a family all the same. And Mr. Mysterious, well, he's still around, tending to his roses, doling out wisdom. Turns out he was more than just a neighbor, he was a lifeline when I was drowning. I owe him a lot. I picked up some new hobbies too, started hiking, getting out into nature. Clears the mind, And the music, it's back in my life, bigger than ever. Sarah and I sometimes jam together. She's got a voice that could melt the coldest heart. I swear. I guess what I'm trying to say is life goes on. It changes, it challenges, but it also gives you chances to grow, to love, to find happiness in places you never thought to look. So here I am, looking forward to whatever comes next. A little older, a little wiser, and a whole lot happier. The past, it's behind me. The future, it's looking bright, my friend, bright and full of hope. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife wanted me to sleep with her best friend to spice up our married life. When I lied to her about it, things took a wild turn. I, 33M, never thought I'd be posting here, but I'm at my wit's end and could use some advice. My wife, Barbara, 31F, and I have been married for 8 years now. We met during our sophomore year in college when we were both part of the same study group for an economics class. I remember being struck by her confidence and the way she could explain complex concepts so easily. She was this vibrant, outgoing girl who could light up any room she walked into. I was more of the quiet, reserved type, always more comfortable with my nose in a book than at a party. Somehow, we balanced each other out perfectly. She brought me out of my shell, encouraging me to try new things and meet new people. I helped ground her, providing a calm presence when her whirlwind energy became too much. We started dating after a group project forced us to spend more time together, and I found myself falling for her quick wit and infectious laugh. Our relationship was great for the first few years. We traveled whenever we could, saving up our entry-level salaries for weekend trips and the occasional international adventure. I'll never forget our backpacking trip through Europe after graduation. We got lost in the winding streets of Venice, shared our first apartment-style Airbnb in Paris, and had our first major fight and subsequent makeup on a rainy day in London. Those experiences shaped us as a couple, teaching us how to navigate challenges together. We got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Her best friend, Hazel, was her maid of honor, and Hazel's husband, Eric, was one of my groomsmen. The wedding was simple but beautiful, held in Barbara's parents' backyard. I can still picture Barbara walking down the aisle, her eyes shining with happiness and promise. Hazel and Barbara have been friends since high school. They met in freshman year when they were both trying out for the cheerleading squad. Neither of them made it, but they bonded over their shared disappointment and have been inseparable ever since. They're always going on girls' trips and having weekly wine nights. I never had any issues with their friendship. In fact, I was glad Barbara had such a close friend. Eric and I got along well too, though we weren't as close as our wives. He's a successful businessman, always talking about his latest deals and investments. I work in IT, and while I enjoy my job, it doesn't make for exciting dinner conversation. Still, we'd often get together for double dates or weekend barbecues. Things started to change about 2 years ago. Barbara began complaining that our sex life had become routine and boring. At first, I thought it was just a phase. We'd been together for 6 years at that point, and I figured it was natural for things to slow down a bit. But her dissatisfaction seemed to grow. I tried to spice things up. Date nights, weekend getaways, new things in the bedroom. But nothing seemed to satisfy her. She kept pushing for more extreme ideas, which made me uncomfortable. I'm not AUD, but some of her suggestions felt like they crossed a line for me. Last month, she dropped a bombshell on me. We were having dinner at home, something we rarely do these days with our busy schedules. Barbara had cooked, which should have been my first clue that something was up. She's never been much of a cook, preferring takeout or restaurants. As we were finishing up, she casually suggested that I sleep with Hazel to add some excitement to our marriage. I nearly choked on my wine. I was shocked and immediately refused. I told her I had no interest in being intimate with anyone else, especially not her best friend. How could she even suggest such a thing? Barbara seemed disappointed but dropped the subject for a while. However, over the past few weeks, she's been bringing it up more and more frequently. She keeps saying things like, "Hazel thinks you're attractive, and it would just be physical, no emotions involved." I've continued to refuse, but her persistence is wearing me down. Yesterday, things came to a head. Barbara cornered me after dinner and started pressuring me again about sleeping with Hazel. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and I felt backed into a corner. In a moment of frustration, I blurted out that I had already done it. I don't know why I said it. Maybe to shock her, maybe to get her to stop asking. Either way, it was a lie. Barbara's reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of being upset or jealous, she seemed relieved. She started asking for details, which I awkwardly fumbled through. I felt terrible lying, but I didn't know how to backtrack now. I'm in a mess of my own making. Barbara thinks I've slept with her best friend, and I have no idea how to handle this situation. Should I come clean about the lie? Should I tell Hazel what's going on? I'm worried that if I tell the truth, Barbara will just start pressuring me again. I never thought our marriage would come to this. We used to be so happy together. I remember our honeymoon in Hawaii, how we spent hours just talking on the beach, planning our future. We wanted kids, a house with a big backyard, family game nights. Now it feels like we're strangers living in the same house. I've tried talking to Barbara about our issues, but she always deflects or changes the subject. It's like she's a completely different person from the woman I married. I miss the way things used to be, but I don't know if we can ever get back to that. Looking back, I wonder if I missed some signs. Barbara started staying out later about a year ago, claiming she was networking for her job in marketing. She also began paying more attention to her appearance, buying new clothes and spending more time at the gym. At the time, I was proud of her for focusing on her career and health. Now I can't help but wonder if there was another reason. There was also an incident about 6 months ago that I had almost forgotten about. We were at a dinner party with Hazel and Eric, and I overheard Barbara and Eric having what seemed like an intense conversation in the kitchen. When I walked in, they quickly separated, and Barbara looked flustered. She brushed it off as nothing when I asked about it later, but now I'm second-guessing everything. I'm lost and confused. I love my wife, but I don't understand why she's so set on this idea. Is there something wrong with our marriage that I'm not seeing? Am I being unreasonable for not wanting to sleep with her friend? Any advice would be appreciated. I keep thinking about the early days of our relationship, how we used to stay up all night talking about our dreams and fears. Barbara wanted to start her own marketing firm someday. I wanted to develop innovative software that could help people. We talked about traveling the world together, maybe even living abroad for a while. Now it feels like we can barely have a conversation that doesn't end in an argument or uncomfortable silence. Part of me wonders if this is just what happens in long-term relationships. Do all couples go through phases like this, or is there something fundamentally broken in our marriage? I love Barbara, or at least I love the person she used to be, but I don't know how to reach that person anymore. I'm worried about what this situation might do to our friend group as well. Hazel and Eric have been our closest friends for years. We've celebrated holidays together, been there for each other through job losses and family deaths. If this blows up, it's not just my marriage at stake, but those friendships too. I don't know what to do next. Should I confront Barbara about her strange behavior? Should I talk to Hazel about what's been going on? Or should I just pretend everything is fine and hope this all blows over? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning here, and I don't know how to save my marriage or myself. Update 1. It's been a week since my last post, and things have taken an unexpected turn. I want to thank everyone who commented and offered advice. Your support has been invaluable during this difficult time. After reading your comments, I realized I needed to have an honest conversation with Hazel. I couldn't keep living with this lie, and I needed to know if she was aware of what Barbara had been suggesting. I met Hazel for coffee at the little cafe where we used to have double dates when we were first married. As I waited for her, I couldn't help but remember happier times. The four of us laughing over shared desserts, planning group vacations, celebrating promotions and birthdays, felt like a lifetime ago. As soon as Hazel sat down, I could tell something was off. She looked nervous and couldn't meet my eyes. Before I could even bring up the situation with Barbara, Hazel blurted out, "I need to tell you something." What she told me next left me reeling. Apparently, Barbara and Eric, Hazel's husband, have been having an affair for the past 3 years. Hazel found out about 6 months ago but had been trying to work things out with Eric. She said she'd been suspicious for a while. Late-night work meetings, secretive phone calls, unexplained expenses, but hadn't wanted to believe it. I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. 3 years. Half of our marriage? All those times Barbara was out with the girls or working late. She was with Eric? The vacations she took alone because I couldn't get time off work? The weekends she spent helping her mom? It all started to make sense. Hazel broke down crying, apologizing for not telling me sooner. She said she'd been torn between her loyalty to Barbara as a friend and her belief that I deserved to know the truth. What finally pushed her to confess was Barbara's suggestion that I sleep with Hazel. Apparently, Barbara had approached Hazel with this idea, claiming it would even things out and make their betrayal less severe. As Hazel talked, memories started flooding back. I remembered a business trip Barbara took about 3 years ago. She had been so excited about it, saying it could lead to a big promotion. When she came back, something seemed different. She was distant, distracted. I had chalked it up to stress from work, but now I wondered if that was when the affair started. There was also the time last year when Barbara insisted on redecorating our bedroom. She bought new sheets, new curtains, even a new mattress. At the time, I thought she was just going through a nesting phase. Now I felt sick thinking about the real reason she might have wanted to change everything. I was furious, hurt, and overwhelmed. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Barbara, had been a lie. I thanked Hazel for her honesty and left the cafe in a daze. When I got home, I confronted Barbara. At first, she tried to deny everything, but when I told her Hazel had confessed, she broke down. She admitted to the affair but tried to justify it, saying she felt neglected and unloved. She claimed that her suggestion about me sleeping with Hazel was an attempt to save our marriage, to make things fair. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had loved and trusted for so long was trying to manipulate me into accepting her infidelity. I told her I needed space and left to stay with a friend. Over the next few days, I did a lot of thinking. I remembered how Barbara and I used to talk about everything, how we'd stay up late sharing our dreams and fears. I thought about the day we bought our first house, how excited we were to start our life together. All of that felt tainted now. I also reflected on the past few years, how Barbara had become more distant and critical. She'd often make comments about how I didn't make enough money or wasn't ambitious enough. I realized now that she'd been comparing me to Eric, who owns a successful business. I thought about all the little moments that should have clued me in. The way Barbara would tense up when I touched her phone, the sudden interest in going to the gym at odd hours, the new friends she never introduced me to. It all pointed to a truth I hadn't wanted to see. After a lot of soul-searching, I've decided I can't continue this marriage. The trust is broken, and I don't think it can be repaired. I've contacted a lawyer and am preparing to file for divorce. Hazel and I have been in touch. She's also decided to end her marriage to Eric. We're both hurting, but it's been helpful to have someone who understands what I'm going through. We've shared memories of the early days of our marriages, trying to pinpoint when things started to go wrong. It's painful but also cathartic in a way. I'm still processing everything, and some days are harder than others. But I know I deserve better than a marriage built on lies and manipulation. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm determined to move forward with honesty and self-respect. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone again for their support and advice. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Hazel and I have been working together with our respective lawyers to gather evidence of the affair. We found credit card statements showing hotel bookings, text messages, and even some emails where Barbara and Eric discussed their relationship. It was painful to go through, but it strengthened our resolve. One particularly difficult discovery was a series of photos from a trip Barbara had told me was a girls' weekend with Hazel. The pictures showed her and Eric at a beach resort, looking very much like a couple in love. Seeing those images brought back all the hurt and anger I thought I was starting to move past. We both filed for divorce on the same day. Barbara and Eric were blindsided. They didn't expect us to find out about their affair, let alone take such decisive action. Barbara tried to convince me to reconsider, promising to end things with Eric and go to couples therapy, but I stood firm. The trust was broken, and I knew I couldn't live with the constant doubt and suspicion. The divorce proceedings have been messy. Barbara is contesting the division of assets, claiming she's entitled to more because of her emotional suffering. It's ironic considering she's the one who caused all this pain. My lawyer assures me we have a strong case, especially with the evidence of her infidelity. Hazel and I have been supporting each other through this process. We meet regularly to discuss our cases and just to talk. It's been helpful to have someone who truly understands what I'm going through. We're both dealing with a lot of anger and hurt, but we're also finding strength we didn't know we had. Last week, we had to go through our old photo albums to find documentation for the divorce proceedings. It was a bittersweet experience, seeing all those happy memories now tainted by what we know. There was a photo from our first Valentine's Day as a married couple where Barbara had surprised me with a homemade dinner. Another showed the four of us at a New Year's Eve party, our arms around each other, faces full of laughter. It's hard to reconcile those images with the reality of our situation now. I've moved out of our house and into a small apartment. It's been an adjustment, but it feels good to have my own space. I'm rediscovering hobbies I'd let slide during my marriage. Playing guitar, hiking, even trying my hand at cooking. It's like I'm getting to know myself again. Work has been a welcome distraction. I threw myself into a big project, and my boss has been understanding about the occasional need to take time off for legal meetings. My coworkers have been supportive too, once I explained the situation. As for Barbara and Eric, last I heard, they're still together. Part of me wonders if their relationship will last now that it's out in the open, but honestly, I try not to think about it too much. They made their choices, and now we're all living with the consequences. I'm not going to pretend it's been easy. There are still days when I wake up and for a split second forget everything that's happened, but then reality sets in, and I have to face the day. But each day gets a little easier, and I'm starting to look forward to the future again. One unexpected outcome of all this has been reconnecting with old friends. People I had lost touch with over the years have reached out after hearing about the divorce. Last weekend, I went fishing with my college roommate for the first time in years. It felt good to remember who I was before all of this happened. For now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I'm not ready to think about dating or new relationships yet. I need time to process everything and learn to trust again. But I'm hopeful that someday I'll find someone who values honesty and commitment as much as I do. I've also started journaling, trying to make sense of everything that's happened. It's helping me process my emotions and see patterns in my relationship that I might have missed before. It's not always easy to confront these truths, but I believe it's necessary for my healing. To anyone going through something similar, hang in there. It's a tough road, but you're stronger than you think. Trust your gut, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. You deserve happiness and respect. As I look towards the future, I'm trying to focus on the positives. I have a chance to rediscover myself, to build a life that truly reflects who I am and what I want. It's scary, but also exciting. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control of my own story. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Wife blindsided me with divorce after 10 years in multiple affairs. Now she wants me back, but I've already moved on with someone new. My wife, 35F, and I, 38M, were married for 10 years with 2 elementary-aged kids. The first 7 years of the marriage were incredible, at least from my point of view. I could not have asked for a better wife and mother. The last 3 years have been much tougher. We went to a bunch of counseling trying to get the marriage back on track, but could never really get there. I planned countless dates, read and listened to everything on improving a marriage under the sun. It helped, but there was a gap between us I could never seem to close, no matter how hard I tried. In the back half of last year, she blindsided me with a divorce. I deeply loved her and was devastated. I tried my best to talk her out of it. She waffled a bit, but ultimately insisted on moving forward. I never got a great answer as to why she filed. I wasn't a perfect husband, to be clear. I had my faults. I could have done better, but I never cheated, was never abusive, and was a great provider. Certainly, these last few years, I was 100% in on trying to save the marriage. In any case, a little more than a month after she filed, she was already seeing a guy. A month after that, she had introduced our kids to him. Then later, during the discovery phase of the divorce process, she confessed to having multiple affairs starting at about the 7-year mark. One of them lasted at least a year, though she claimed it amounted to only a handful of actual encounters. I had no clue she was even capable of this. The amount of lying she did to keep all this hidden is truly incredible. The day I found out was the worst day of my life, but at least I finally understood why we had such difficulty connecting those last few years. It wasn't for lack of trying on my part. Fast forward 6 months and nearly $100,000 in lawyer bills later, and she decides she wants to try and reconcile. Mind you, she's still dating the same guy, but she tells me she'll dump him to work on things with me. So what caused her change of heart? I think it might be because she found out I had started dating someone who's awesome, by the way, or possibly because she realized how much her financial life was going to change with my high income exiting the picture. For her part, she claims it was because she saw how great of a dad I was being when I had our kids. I sat down with her and heard her out on everything. I felt this was the least I owed her after a decade of marriage. She took responsibility for her mistakes and gave a heartfelt apology, although she was sure to partially blame my behaviors for driving her to it. No matter how thin you slice it, there are 2 sides to every story. I get that, but I utterly rejected the nonsense of blaming me for her cheating. All that said, I do believe she is truly sorry. Ultimately, though, I told her no and pressed forward with the divorce, which was final as of a few weeks ago. For her part, she's been relentless trying to get me to give her another chance, texting almost daily. It's worn heavy on me to see someone I cared so much about filled with so much regret and hurting so badly. I've held firm, though. There's just too much damage. I don't think I could ever trust her again. Plus I have this great new gal who's beautiful inside and out, and who's been so incredibly supportive and patient. To be clear, we met well after I had been served papers. Typing this out highlights the insanity of all this for me. Who in their right mind would try and save a marriage like this? Who in their right mind would even have the guts to ask to try and fix it? I don't love her anymore, but I did love her for so long. And the kids, the co-parenting. I'll never really get away from this woman. It's hard. I guess I'm not sure why I'm posting this. Maybe just to get some validation. I'm making the right call. Anyone been through something like this before? Any advice? Comments. Comment 1. She said she will dump him, but only after you say yes. What part of you are not planned to be is she not getting up? I've been tempted to tell the other guy how little she thinks of him, but then I'm afraid she'd double down on trying to get back with me. Plus, he's way older than her, so I get a little satisfaction out of the fact it must be pretty gross. That's probably petty on my end. Comment 2. Dude, she is selfish and delusional. Be proud of yourself that you tried the best, have dignity, did the right decision, and are still civil with her. Comment 3. You have been through 2 of the worst experiences a person can go through, and you have come out of them still alive, upright, and whole. Why revisit all that pain and heartache again? You know, if she was capable of doing it once and keeping it so well hidden that she is capable of doing it again. And she's not wanting to reconcile for your sake. She wants to reconcile for her own selfish reasons. Walk away. Don't look back. Look forward. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I think I screwed up. I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, 30 female, for 5 years, and it feels like in the last year she's become a complete stranger. We were both established when we met, and at first it felt like we shared the same values. I went to a trade school and learned a very technical job. I worked crap entry-level jobs before I proved myself and built a reputation in coding to the point where my references trumped my education. My wife has a graduate degree and works in a management position. This created a bit of what I thought was friendly tension at the time, early on. I complained about middle management. I saw them as roadblocks between me and finishing tasks. My wife saw middle management as necessary for directing personnel and resources. Personally, I was stuck with a bad string of middle managers that thought code developers were modular and replaceable. They set unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and created scope creep every time. I told her about the next boneheaded thing my manager instituted. She always took his side. Note, she never met him. He sees things you don't, she says. After about a year of dating, I learned to stop telling her about my day at work if it doesn't involve days off or raises. I always felt like she resented the fact I didn't go back to school for a 4-year or graduate degree. She pushed about it early on, before marriage, but when I broke down the loans and debt, she dropped it. She was relatively debt-free. When we married, as I said, we were pretty close in earning power as well. About 2 years ago, I started working for a company that had an owner that talked to me directly. He saw value in me and my potential. I now make 50% more than my wife, and my manager is a guy that works well with me. While not a technical lead, he embodies what a scrum master should be. I would say he knows how to stay out of my way, but that makes it sound adversarial. He's a great supervisor. The first 4 years of marriage went great overall. I didn't complain about managers from work, and she didn't push me to dump thousands into a piece of paper in debt. We had fun, went on date nights several times a month, shared hobbies, cooked together, read books together, and watched movies together. When the first lockdown hit, we both worked from home. Our house is really nice with 3 spare bedrooms for if we eventually had kids. One was already converted into an office for me, and when the lockdown started, we converted the second into an office for her. We both telecommute, but we both had very different philosophies about it. I would get up, make breakfast, shower, shave, dress in a suit, then walk into my home office. I hate suits and ties, by the way, but it has put me in a mental state of, okay, this is work for me. My wife, however, rolls out of bed, eats breakfast, brushes her teeth, puts on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and goes into her office with the iPad to play Candy Crush between emails. I guess I see it as work from home, and she sees it as work from home. I digress. It's the weirdest thing how proximity can create distance. She has several meetings a day, and I can tell because she keeps her door wide open, and I can hear them. I have 1 meeting a day, a scrum, and it's short. I closed my door for mine. 5 months ago, she says she felt insulted that I closed my door for the daily scrum. I explained it's for peace and to keep my mind focused on work. She said she felt like I was hiding something. I tried to keep up her hobbies together, but she brushed it off as, we see each other all day as it is. I should have pressed, but I didn't. I treated lockdown as temporary, and maybe I shouldn't have. It got really bad when her company instituted a partial office reopening. She jumped at the chance to be part of the 50% of the company back in the rearranged office to allow social distancing. I don't blame her. I miss working at the office too, but my company hasn't opened up the offices yet, and as long as I have access to my dev environment, it really isn't needed. I think several of her other coworkers got into her head. She should stay after work to hang out with them, have drinks at her coworker's place. I pressed. I wanted to know more, but she was secretive and guarded. She became colder and colder too. Felt like I had a roommate and not a wife at that point. Last month, on a weekend, she put her old iPad on the desk and said, "Can you wipe this? I want to give this to my niece." I shrugged. I often do that sort of thing for the family and didn't think much about it. Off she went to another company gathering, and I switched on the iPad. Maybe my wife was becoming so brazen. Maybe she thought I wouldn't check it and just do a factory reset. The point is, I checked it and saw her messages app, pics, videos. I am with her boss. They've been having an affair for 2 months. I can't describe the feeling in my veins. It was like blood turned to ice. It reminded me of the scene in Equilibrium where the polygraph flatlined. I copied everything, packaged it into cloud storage I used for dev projects separate from work, and started looking for a lawyer. I didn't confront her at first because I wasn't sure what I would do. The new sensation in my body felt like I was both numb and walking through water. She didn't notice or didn't care by that point. We were already dead bedroom. We were really in the roommate stage, I guess. I contacted a lawyer, and he wanted to keep instigating and me to keep my mouth shut. He suggested I get a private investigator and suggested a good one. For the last 4 weeks, we were gathering evidence, and he was preparing the filing for divorce. Be patient, he kept telling me, and my ice-filled veins that her indifference made it easy at first. Yesterday, my lawyer told me he had the filing almost ready. Our state is at fault, and the PI got photos, videos, plus the texts. It was pretty much a slam dunk. Then, last night, I don't know what happened to me, but the ice turned to fire. She came home late, of course, and I don't even remember what she said to me, but I went off. I said I hoped it was worth it for her boss. She turned mean, nasty, and vindictive. She said I wasn't there for her emotionally. I was just lounging all day at home, even if I was earning the lion's share at home. I wasn't intellectually stimulating, even though I worked a highly technical job. I told her I had a lawyer, and she laughed. She said my bluff was pathetic. There was no way I was leaving her. That even if I divorced her, she would get half of my paycheck. If I stayed with her, at least I would get to occasionally have sex, so I shouldn't mess this up. She was a different person. I said to her, "That's not a marriage." She laughed again. "Honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too." She laughed again as she went to bed. I emailed my boss and said I needed a week off to handle a family issue. He, of course, granted it. I slept on the couch in my office. This morning, she laughed as I was getting dressed and only said, "Don't wait up." I went to my lawyer's office and he said he had the papers ready. He had a process server with him and asked how I wanted the papers served. I told him my idea. My lawyer, bless him, laughed and said, "You better not. I've had so many people want to do a cutesy or revenge serving, and I always talk them out of it. Judges don't have a sense of humor." He told me this could cost me alimony or assets. I didn't care. Her words burned me. I wanted her burned back. The lawyer did his best to keep telling me not to, but he relented when he saw how serious I was about this. The process server, he heard my idea, he laughed as well and said, "You, my hero. I had the special order something with a rush cost. Sent the process over to pick it up and deliver that with the papers to my wife's work." The process server told me what happened when he was done. He said he showed up at her office with the large box and papers. He found my wife talking and laughing with a group of coworkers and friends and asked her name. She confirmed and asked what it was about. He put the box on a nearby desk and opened it. It was a cake, one that you could get a custom image printed on in frosting. I didn't even know it was a thing until this morning. The image was an image of my wife and her boss in an embrace, clothed but obvious what they were doing, with the words, "Here's your cake, eat it," piped in icing above the image. The process server put the papers next to the cake on the table. "You've been served," he said. What happened next was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office saw the cake. My wife freaked and swatted the large cake box off the table where it fell on the carpet, but with the image still visible. Several of her coworkers started berating her, and she started crying and screaming. The process server took a hasty retreat. My phone blew up, and I just kept sending her to voicemail. I don't bother reading her texts. She hasn't come home, but her mother texted me saying she is going to stay over there for now. The euphoric rush of the cake felt great, but as the hours pass, I'm considering my lawyer's words now. That I effed this up. Let's check in on the update. I am overwhelmed with all the support I've gotten in the past week. I'm still off from work, but my boss decided to give me 2 weeks instead of the one I requested. Good man he is. I've already split our savings in half, put my half in an account in my name, and changed autopay for the mortgage, credit freezes, etc. Everything my lawyer advised me to do with the household funds. First off, we have no kids. Second, I'm seeing a therapist to help me. I found one that is well-versed in helping with infidelity. Seen him twice, and I'm feeling a lot more balanced now. Still some weird low points, but nowhere near the same amount of swing between the two. After the cake stunt, I'm definitely taking my lawyer's advice on anything from this point forward. He said, you can be happy or you can be right, in regards to taking his advice, and I get that now. He told me that if my wife wants to return home, that I'm not legally allowed to kick her out, but I should record all interactions with her. She's not staying at home again, still at her mom's, but she did want to come by Saturday to talk. My lawyer told me I could, but said he would prefer if she wants to talk to have it done at his office with her own lawyer present as well as himself. I presented this to her, an email of course, and she responded that she didn't have a lawyer. My lawyer said, barring showing up at his office, have witnesses and record the meeting. I let my wife know this was my condition to talking with her. She actually accepted, so I had 2 mutual friends come in. All 3 of us with our phones on the table ready to record. She came in and tried to give me an awkward hug, but I just held my hand up, and the phone started to record as the 4 of us sat down at the kitchen table. She was actually apologetic. She said she felt like she was watching a movie versus being in charge of her life, but it felt thrilling and with a rush. She asked if I wanted to know why. I said I really didn't care at this point. She felt that she owed that much to me and told me she said that when she started going back to the office when it reopened, she got really close to 3 female coworkers, each a few years older than her, and 2 of them divorced. She said they wormed their way into her head, told her about how she's owed more than she's getting. They asked her constantly about her home life. The ringleader apparently was psychoanalyzing me for my wife's stories. My wife told them about my issues with managers back in my early career, and the ringleader took this to mean I'm threatened by educated people. The ringleader told her that I was a submissive male and she needed to take charge, man up in your life, that if I found out, I might have shouted and threatened her. Get in line. My wife still has her job for now, but only just. The people that saw the cake was my wife, the 3 witches, her fair partner or boss, and according to her, 2 other coworkers that were lateral to her. The boss immediately ended the affair, told her to only communicate with him in email, and that if she ever tried to show up in his office alone, he would call on a coworker immediately. The 3 witches turned on her immediately and publicly berated her for doing such an awful thing. The other coworkers, according to her, didn't want to get involved with her soap opera, so no reports to HR. She said her 3 friends doing a 180 on her immediately sort of shook her out of her fog. She seemed really ashamed and said she had to ask for $5,000. I was confused because there was money left in her account. I made it a point that she had it. She was living with her mom. She didn't have any major expenses. It turns out the ringleader and the 2 other witches wanted to be paid for their silence. They're blackmailing her and giving her a deadline lest we'll know all the sordid details. She was pleading for help. I told her that there is no going back to normal after this. Everything will change. That if she bends now, it will be more money later. Best for her to report herself, her boss, and her coworkers. It would work better than having sleepless nights waiting for the knife to fall. She seemed to hem and haw on that, but she did finally ask the big question. What about us? Where does that leave us? I told her there was no us. That's done, and she best get herself that lawyer to go over the divorce. The best I can do is tell her how to handle her work situation, but she most likely needs to find another career after this. I also said she needs to go to therapy herself because someone who would go to laughing in my face to pleading for help a week later needs help sorting themselves out. She pointed out the cake, and all I said to that was, "Yeah, I'm seeing someone for that." She left soon after that. No word on if she will follow my advice or try to pay her coworkers blackmail. Why is it always the coworkers? Now on to the next story. Story 6. Neighbor from hell refused to stop having loud parties and made my life a living hell. So I made him lose his house and reputation. I'm Mark, an ordinary man living a simple life in Willowdale. I'm a spouse and a father of 2. Willowdale life was as simple as it got. I was living a typical late 30s life just like the rest of us. On weekdays, I work as a data analyst in an MNC and spend my evenings with my wonderful family. On weekends, I would take my family to an amusement park or plan movie and karaoke nights at home, until I met the personification of a narcissist, Chad Reynolds, my nightmare neighbor. In his late 30s, Chad is one of those people who gets everything in life without putting in any effort. Born into an affluent household, he believed that the universe revolved around him. He's in his late 30s, but he still acts like an aimless teenager. I don't think he understands what life is all about. Last Christmas, he moved into my neighborhood, turning my world upside down. He has a big house that not only threw a permanent shadow over my cute little house, but also made my bright and fulfilling life full of darkness. His big parties and never-ending noise pollution had driven me insane. The constant disturbances were too much for anyone, and it was only a matter of time before I couldn't take it any longer. When he moved here, I tried to establish a positive friendship with him in the hopes of reliving my nostalgic past as a bachelor. I attempted to involve him in neighborhood activities and events whenever possible to give him a chance to connect with his neighbors, as most of them were already annoyed by his behavior. Not only that, my wife always used to collect his mail and parcels when he was away for his trips, but he wasn't thankful at all. He is one of those people who live in a delusionary world where they believe everyone must obey them simply because they are wealthy. Initially, I wasn't thinking much, maybe he was just one of those persons who doesn't know how to express themselves or exhibit empathy. But Chad is one of those people who literally gets on your nerves. I used to control my temperament, but now with every passing day, things are getting difficult because of the way he speaks to me. Also, one of my biggest concerns is my daughter and wife's safety, as my wife had told me that he hangs out with ill-mannered people and they keep passing unnecessary comments whenever they see my wife. Chad is not only causing problems in my life, but society as a whole is sick of him. When no one was home, he dumped all of his trash in front of an older citizen's house. When anyone questioned him, he denied everything and tried to blame everything on me. Fortunately, the old couple had a good bond with me and were also aware of Chad's bad behavior, so they didn't believe him, but I was furious and I wanted to have a confrontation with him that day. But my wife stopped me and explained how confronting him would make things worse for us. At the end of the day, I have a job and don't want to get engaged in any legal proceedings. I'm just hoping I somehow get some extra patience so that I can deal with this rude dude. Despite this false charge, I have installed a security camera on my lawn facing his house to demonstrate my thesis in such future scenarios. Update 1. Well, Chad appears to have decided to make my life a living hell because I was about to have a fist fight with my neighbor from hell last weekend. It all started when his wicked backyard speakers created chaos. It wasn't the first time we had to hear his awful music collection, but this time I lost my temper because my little princess, who had been suffering from typhoid, was trying to fall asleep despite a request to lower the volume over the phone. The music volume continued to rise. It wasn't just music. It was a tremor in my eardrums. So I decided to visit his house directly and confront him. When I got inside his gate, I was in shock to see the condition of his super expensive car. The car was crying for help, just like me. It is a black car, but with dust it looks silver. Without getting distracted, I moved in and looked at the mess he had made in his backyard. I was disgusted to see that I think just being rich is not enough to be a social and hygienic man. Even my dog, Adam, cleans his spot before sitting. How can someone throw a party in this mess? I asked myself. Above all, I saw that there were broken beer bottles spilled all over his lawn to make it difficult for me to walk without light. So I turned on my phone's flashlight and kept walking towards his main entrance. I won't lie, it does feel a little weird to go to a party uninvited, but it was about my daughter's health, so I went in and said, "Chad, I've asked you nicely to lower the music. Can't you show some consideration for your neighbors?" This was the first time in all these few months when I have confronted Chad face to face. I was nervous, but at the same time very frustrated. Upon hearing my words, Chad replied with a devilish smile, "Consideration? Please? My parties are legendary, and you're just jealous because your life is so dull." Hearing this coming from a man who has not done anything in life except spend his parents' hard-earned money recklessly made me feel pity for him. But I controlled my anger and I thought I should try one more time to explain to him the exact reason for my request. I told him that my 9-year-old was sick and doctors had recommended proper rest for her recovery, but because of Chad's everyday parties and high music on speakers, she is unable to fall asleep and her health is getting worse day by day. Now, after hearing something so serious, any normal human being would definitely show some sort of empathy and try to cooperate, but Chad being Chad again proved why I call him a neighbor from hell. Why do people like you even have kids when you can't afford to sleep in a hotel in a situation like this? He smirked. Why do you want to paint us as villains because you can't care for your brats? His laughter was not mere laughter. It was an insult to my pleadings. All of his ill-mannered pals began laughing and boosting him. After hearing this, I was furious at him and wanted to hit him in the face. But my wife had already followed me to their apartment, and I didn't want to make a commotion and make it impossible for her to live in my absence. So I simply went home and tried to calm myself. I was feeling so helpless. This was the first time in these last few years when I felt so useless because I couldn't even protect my family from this devil. I was so angry that I was literally shaking. After having water and calming myself, I decided to call the cops on him. I was hoping that after this, Chad would finally stop playing music to such high levels, but I overheard Chad bragging to a friend about how he could buy his way out of any trouble. The cops did arrive, but Chad's charm attack was so effective that they left without taking any action. So all of this for absolutely nothing. I am even more pissed off now, venting out here because it is choking me from the inside. Update 2. My ongoing battle with my neighbor, Chad, has taken an even more troubling turn. It appears that Chad is determined to make my life a living nightmare, and I am losing my patience day by day. It's becoming quite clear that he is arrogant and has a lack of consideration for others. He is living in his own bubble, and he gets pleasure in seeing people suffer because of him. So, my wife works as a freelance writer. Last week, as my wife was preparing for an important Zoom meeting with her new client in my home office, I could hear the extremely loud sound of heavy machinery revving up in Chad's backyard. I don't know what wrong on earth I have done to get a demonic neighbor like him. I was frustrated, but I tried to ignore it as my wife had not yet shown any sign of discomfort during her call. But soon the noise became unbearable. Even the client on her call started questioning the noise as it was creating a disturbance for him to explain his business needs. I immediately rushed outside just to find that he had decided to start a major landscaping project right next to my home office window. The deafening sound of bulldozers and chainsaws filled the air, making it impossible for my wife to focus on her work. I called him out of desperation and requested that he put a halt to the noise temporarily so she could just finish her work. It was just a matter of 15 to 20 minutes after all. Without a surprise, his response was just as obnoxious as ever. He simply laughed it off and said, "I can do whatever I want on my property. Your wife and her work are not my concern." This wasn't the first time he made me feel useless and helpless after all. I just hung up the phone without having any further debate with him. It was clear that reasoning with him was futile. I contemplated what to do next. I thought of calling the local authorities to complain about the noise disturbance. As I was about to call, my wife reminded me of the previous futile attempts to involve the police in dealing with Chad. She also mentioned that she requested the client to call back after a few minutes due to some emergency. Luckily, the client was kind enough to understand the situation and agreed to the same. She had to go to her friend's house just to attend that call. Determined not to let Chad get the best of me this time, I decided to take a different approach. I reached out to some of the other neighbors who had been equally affected by his behavior. We formed a collective complaint, including a petition signed by all the affected households. We hope that the combined voices of our community would finally make a difference. With our collective complaint in hand, we presented it to the local authorities, hoping that they would take the matter more seriously this time. It was a small victory when they assured us that they would investigate the noise disturbance and Chad's disregard for the peace and safety of the neighborhood. Although it's too early to say whether this will bring about any real change, I'm encouraged by the support of my fellow neighbors. I don't know how much action would be taken against him, if at all, but I and the other neighbors are now adamant that we are going to teach a good lesson to Chad. It's high time we put our foot down to his monstrous behavior. Update 3. Well, after writing my last update, I thought things would get better or back to normal, but seems like money can buy a way out of any situation easily for people like Chad. Week after week, the situation is just getting worse. He is a living devil who is taking pleasure in making my life a living misery. I was already thinking about getting a house in a different locality, despite understanding the financial challenges. I am able to see how bad of an influence it was creating on my 9-year-old. Not just that, my wife has also mentioned several incidents where Chad's ill-mannered pals tried to pass sick comments on her indirectly. I was thinking about moving, but everything changed a week ago while I was cleaning my backyard. I didn't realize that a simple task could turn into something serious. As I was almost done, a strong gust of wind suddenly blew dirt and grass clippings into the air. It seemed like nature was against me, sending all that mess straight into Chad's yard. His clean outdoor furniture got covered in debris. It was a disaster caused by pure bad luck. I was not expecting him at home, but unfortunately, I saw him come out of his fancy house looking pretty mad, though he tried to hide it. This was one of those moments when I regret why I haven't listened to my wife. She had told me in the morning only not to clean the backyard as, according to her, it was going to rain anyway in a day or two. I knew it was already very late to regret now, and I had to bear the coincidences now. Without wasting even a single second, he began cursing and shouting at me for ruining his pristine cushions and artwork. I let him rant for a few more minutes since I figured any conversation with someone as stupid as him would be a waste of time and energy. I'm not going to lie, it felt kind of satisfying to see him taste his own medicine. So, after he finished demeaning me and boasting about his opulent furniture and cushions when he was venting out, I just smirked and said, "Oh, the wind doesn't know about your inexpensive furniture," and went inside my house. I knew he was going to be infuriated by my comment and would further vent out, so I let him be. Chad is a spoiled child who won't take no for an answer and demands that I clean his lawn right away. So, to avoid any argument, I just showed my middle finger and bolted my door. I wanted him to enter my premises to charge me or do whatever he wanted. That would have been evidence against him, and I would have sued him for threatening me and my family, but he was an evil man. He had other ideas on his sleeves to exact revenge on me. He fed cannabis brownies to Adam, my dog. Yes, that's correct. He fed an innocent creature a cannabis brownie, which caused my dog to puke and have diarrhea. Initially, I thought my dog was sick due to weather changes, but after taking him to the clinic, we discovered that it was due to medication intake. When I got home, I decided to check the camera and discovered that my neighbor from hell and his wicked cronies had fed my dog this medication. I am still in shock. I mean, how can someone do something this horrible? This is totally inhuman. I was about to leave the place, but not anymore. Now, my rage knows no bounds, and I am determined not to leave this place but to force Chad to either leave or change his attitude. I'm going to teach him proper social behavior. Update 4. After my last update, I confronted Chad about what he did to my innocent pet, and he just laughed it off, showing a complete lack of remorse or empathy. I demanded an apology, but he scoffed and said, "You need to loosen up a bit. Maybe you should take a page out of my book." I couldn't believe the audacity of this man. It was clear that reasoning with him was futile, and it was time to take matters into my own hands. So, I decided to consult with my other neighbors who had also suffered due to Chad's outrageous behavior. We began documenting every instance of his disruptive behavior, from the wild parties to the trash he dumped in front of the elderly couple's house. We collected evidence of his arrogance and disregard for the well-being of others. Armed with this information, We contacted the local homeowners association to file a formal complaint against Chad. Surprisingly, the association took our complaint seriously, and they issued a warning to him about his behavior. It was a small victory, but it felt like progress. However, Chad being Chad, he continued to act defiant and unapologetic. Not willing to back down, we also explored legal options to address his ongoing nuisance. We consulted with an attorney who advised us on potential legal actions we could take against Chad, from noise complaints to harassment. While it might not be a quick resolution, we are determined to see through this. Not to forget, my wife and daughter, who had been living in constant distress due to Chad's antics, still meant to give the comfort and support I was looking for at that time. I am glad that I was able to control my anger, otherwise, I would have been in jail for beating the out of him by now. Update 5. After my last update, I was determined to fight back, but I wasn't sure how. But luckily, I had a wife who was as determined as me. She kept telling me we have to do something for our sanity and our kids' sake. She always said that Chad doesn't care what we or the other neighbors think of them because we are not his circle of friends and people, so we need to expose him to his social class. My wife came up with a brilliant idea. Chad's dad was an affluent businessman in the town and enjoyed a reputation of being a social worker in his community. The rest of everything was so seamless. We just had to create a page in the name of our housing society and post Chad's narcissistic behavior, tagging his dad's affiliates. The post had to go viral to garner the attention of his dad and his rivals. My wife, being in the digital space, knew how to do it well. Each video of Chad's evilness was posted on various social media platforms and was shared and reshared by many groups and individuals. Yeah, that's how easy it was. It took a couple of weeks before it was noticed by Chad's social circle. As soon as he saw it, he came running to our doors, hurling abuses at us. Yes, we recorded that too and went online to show the live actions, like why not? My evil neighbor from hell found himself backed into a hole as the pressure built. His dad's rivals were quick to pick our sides and made sure that all our posts went viral and his dad's company's name was brought down. The situation with him had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined, and it was clear that he wouldn't change his ways voluntarily. Earlier, Chad was not bothered about our inconvenience because he didn't care what we thought about him. But now his dad's reputation was at stake. He was being questioned and trolled by people of his social class, and everyone wants to maintain a reputation in their own circle. The hatred towards him grew so intense that local boys started painting his walls as an evil monster and whatnot. We started getting support from the local community and social groups. Chad was caught up in many fines and noise violation penalties, making his life miserable in front of his elites. I got to know that his dad's reputation also suffered. The NGO and social groups with which his dad was associated criticized him for raising such an evil son. Chad was keeping low-key all this while. We thought he waited for the matter to cool down before appearing again. But that was not true. Chad's house was locked from the outside. Everyone in the neighborhood speculated different theories. Some said that he had left the city, and some said he was living with his parents until the matter was settled down. After 2 to 3 months, we saw a family shifting in Chad's house. This time, I didn't make any move of befriending my new neighbor, but others in the society were interested to know who had moved in and if they were also like the previous one. We got to know that Chad had moved out and his father had rented the property to a family who had moved in. Oh, I cannot thank my stars enough. It is a family of 4, and his youngest son is of my daughter's age, so I'm guessing they would be indulged in any selfish act like Chad did as a bachelor. Yesterday, the man of the house smiled at me and tried to exchange small talk, asking about my family and my work. I'm so glad that we were finally able to come out of this mess. I'm praying for a peaceful stay in my house now, but if anything develops, I'll update this thread. Thanks for all the support and well wishes. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My fiancée fell in love with a married man while being in a relationship with me for 6 years. I was still ready to forgive her when she apologized, but this secret made me so angry. I am 29. Never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. My world has been turned upside down, and I need to get this off my chest. I've been with my fiancée, Anna, 28, for 6 years. We met during our final year of college at a mutual friend's party. I remember it like it was yesterday. She was wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, and her laugh could light up the entire room. We hit it off immediately, talking about everything from our shared love of obscure indie bands to our dreams of working in tech after graduation. We both landed jobs in the same city. I joined a software development firm, while Anna got into project management. We were young, ambitious, and in love. We'd spend our weekends exploring the city, trying out new restaurants, and dreaming about our future together. It wasn't always easy. We had our fair share of arguments about work-life balance and finances, but we always managed to work through it. 3 years into our relationship, we decided to move in together. It was a big step, but it felt right. We found a cozy apartment with a small balcony where we'd have our morning coffee. We established our routines: Friday night dates, weekend hikes, and cooking together on Sundays. I proposed last year during a surprise trip to the beach where we had our first vacation. Anna cried happy tears, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We were set to get married this summer, and I couldn't wait to start our life together as husband and wife. Looking back, I realized there were signs that something was off. About 3 months ago, Anna started becoming distant. She was working late more often, always on her phone, and seemed less interested in our usual activities. I remember one Friday night when I had planned a special date, tickets to a concert by her favorite band. Anna called at the last minute saying she had to work late. I was disappointed but understood. Her company was going through a merger, and things were hectic. I tried talking to her about it several times. "Is everything okay?" I'd ask. "You seem stressed." But she'd brush it off, saying work was crazy and she was just tired. I believed her because, well, why wouldn't I? This was Anna, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world. Last month, everything came crashing down. I was using Anna's laptop to check our joint account for wedding expenses. She had left her email open, and a message caught my eye. It was from a guy named Mike, and the subject line read, "I miss you." My heart sank. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. I read the email. It was clear they were having an affair. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Memories flashed through my mind. All the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the decreased intimacy between us. It all made sense now in the worst possible way. I confronted Anna that evening when she got home. I still remember the look on her face when I asked, "Who's Mike?" She froze, her eyes widening in shock and then filling with tears. She broke down immediately, confessing that she had been seeing Mike for the past 4 months. Through her sobs, Anna explained that Mike was a client at her company, married with 2 kids. They met during a project and started talking. She said it began innocently, just friendly chats during coffee breaks, but then they started meeting outside of work, and one thing led to another. Anna swore it was a mistake and that she regretted it deeply. She said she had tried to end it multiple times but kept getting pulled back in. "I still love you," she cried, clutching my arm. "Please, we can work through this. I'll do anything." I was devastated. 6 years of trust gone in an instant. The future I had imagined. Our wedding, our home, the family we talked about starting. It all felt like a lie now. How could Anna, the person I trusted most in the world, do this to us? I needed time to process, so I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother. Anna kept calling and texting, begging for another chance. Her messages ranged from desperate pleas to angry accusations that I was throwing away our relationship without giving her a chance to explain. After a week, I agreed to meet and talk. We met at a neutral coffee shop, the same one where we used to study together in college. Anna looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She seemed genuinely remorseful and promised to cut all contact with Mike. She even offered to quit her job to prove her commitment to me. I was torn. Part of me wanted to forgive her and move forward. We had built a life together, and despite everything, I still loved her. But another part couldn't get past the betrayal. How could I ever trust her again? Every time she'd be late from work or on her phone, would I be wondering if she was lying to me? After much soul-searching and long talks with my family, I decided to give our relationship another chance. I told Anna we would need to postpone the wedding and go to couples counseling. She agreed to everything, seeming relieved that I was willing to try. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. 2 days ago, I was helping Anna clean out our spare room, which we were planning to turn into a home office. As I was moving some boxes, I found a small shoebox hidden in the back of the closet. Curious, I opened it. Inside were 2 positive pregnancy tests and some medical documents. My heart stopped. I confronted Anna, and she broke down again. She admitted that she had gotten pregnant twice during her affair with Mike. Both times, she chose to have an abortion without telling anyone. Not me, not Mike, not even her best friend. I was speechless. The betrayal, the lies, the secrecy. It was all too much. I couldn't believe the person I thought I knew could do something like this. I told Anna I needed space and left the apartment. Now I'm staying at a hotel, trying to figure out what to do. My family is furious. My brother, who had become close to Anna over the years, wants me to cut all ties with her. He keeps saying, "She's shown you who she really is. Believe her." My parents, who always treated Anna like a daughter, are heartbroken. I remember how my mom cried with joy when we announced our engagement. Now she calls me, worry evident in her voice. They're also concerned about how this will affect our extended family, especially since we had already sent out wedding invitations. I'm lost and don't know what to do. The woman I loved and trusted for 6 years has become a stranger to me. How do I move forward from this? Should I try to salvage our relationship? Or is it beyond repair? And what about Mike's wife? Does she deserve to know the truth? Any advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to come up for air. Update 1. It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone who commented and sent messages of support. Your words helped me more than you know during this difficult time. After my last post, I spent a week at the hotel, barely eating or sleeping. I couldn't stop thinking about Anna, our relationship, and the future we had planned together. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the life we had built crumbling around me. I remembered our first date, when we walked along the river and talked until sunrise. I thought about the time we adopted our cat, Milo, from the local shelter, and how Anna had cried happy tears when he curled up in her lap. These memories, once so precious, now felt tainted. My brother came to check on me, bringing food and clean clothes. He's always been my rock ever since we were kids. I remember when I first told him about Anna. He had teased me mercilessly about how smitten I was, but he also said he'd never seen me happier. Now he sat with me in that hotel room, listening as I poured out my heart, offering support without judgment. Eventually, I knew I had to face Anna. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop we used to frequent during our college days. It was where we had our first official date, where we studied for finals together, where I had practiced my proposal speech. Now it felt like a fitting place to possibly end our story. The moment I saw Anna, my emotions went haywire. She looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and a defeated posture. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing the oversized sweater I had given her for Christmas last year. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. Another part wanted to scream at her for destroying everything we had built together. We talked for hours. Anna explained how the affair started. Late nights at work, feeling disconnected from me, the excitement of something new. She talked about how Mike had pursued her, complimenting her work and making her feel valued. Started with just talking, she said. He understood the pressure you were under at work. I felt like I could tell him things I couldn't tell you. She swore she never meant for it to go so far, that she had tried to end it multiple times. When she found out she was pregnant the first time, she panicked. She knew the baby could be either mine or Mike's, and the thought of potentially having another man's child while engaged to me was too much for her to handle. I didn't know what to do, she sobbed. I was scared and ashamed. I knew if I told you I'd lose you, and if I told Mike he might leave his family. I couldn't bear the thought of breaking up 2 relationships. She made the decision to have an abortion without telling anyone. The guilt ate at her, but she convinced herself it was a one-time mistake. Then it happened again. The second abortion was what finally made her realize how far she had fallen. She ended things with Mike for good and was trying to find a way to tell me everything when I discovered the email. I listened to all of this in a daze. The Anna I knew or thought I knew would never have done these things. But then again, did I ever really know her? I thought about all the time she had lied to me over the past few months, all the moments of intimacy we had shared while she was carrying this secret. It made me feel sick. After our talk, I went to my parents' house. They've always been my safe haven, and I needed their support now more than ever. They were waiting for me when I arrived, concern etched on their faces. My mom immediately pulled me into a hug, and I broke down in her arms. They were supportive but clearly disappointed. My mom cried, saying she had always thought of Anna as the daughter she never had. My dad, usually stoic, looked older than I'd ever seen him. We sat around the kitchen table, the same one where we had announced our engagement to them. My mom made my favorite comfort food, her homemade lasagna, but I could barely eat. We talked for hours, going over every detail of what had happened. They listened without judgment, offering advice when I asked for it, but mostly just being there for me. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, going through the motions at work and avoiding social media. Our friends started asking questions about the wedding. Some had already booked flights and accommodations. I couldn't bear to explain, so I asked my brother to handle it. He sent out a brief message saying the wedding was off due to unforeseen circumstances. The reactions were mixed. Some friends reached out with concern, others with curiosity. A few who knew both Anna and me well guessed that something major had happened. I appreciated the support but couldn't bring myself to share the full story. Felt too raw, too personal. During this time, Anna continued to reach out. She sent emails detailing her therapy sessions, promising she was working on herself. She begged for another chance, swearing she would spend the rest of her life making it up to me if I would just give her the opportunity. Part of me wanted to believe her. We had 6 years of history, of love, of building a life together. I thought about our plans for the future. The house we wanted to buy, the children we hoped to have. Could I really throw all of that away? But every time I considered forgiveness, the image of those pregnancy tests would flash in my mind. The lies, the betrayal, the sheer magnitude of her deceit. It was overwhelming. After much soul-searching and long talks with my family, I made a decision. I couldn't continue the relationship with Anna. The trust was irreparably broken, and I knew I would never be able to look at her the same way again. I met with Anna one last time to tell her my decision. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life. We met at our apartment, the home we had shared for the past 3 years. As soon as she saw my face, she knew. She cried, begged, and pleaded, but I stood firm. I returned her engagement ring and told her I would be moving out the next day. As I was packing my things, I came across a framed photo of us from our first vacation together. We had gone to the beach, and the picture showed us laughing as we built a sandcastle. We looked so happy, so in love. It hit me then that I wasn't just losing my fiancé, but also my best friend and the future we had planned together. As I write this update, I'm staying with my brother while I look for a new place. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I know I made the right decision for myself. The road ahead seems daunting, but for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. There's one more thing I need to address. Mike's wife. Many of you urged me to tell her the truth, and I've been grappling with this decision. I'll share more about that in my next update. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and I finally gathered the courage to write this. The past few months have been a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions, but I feel like I'm slowly starting to find my footing again. First, I want to address the question many of you asked about Mike's wife. After much deliberation and advice from friends and family, I decided she deserved to know the truth. It wasn't an easy decision, and I wrestled with the potential consequences for days, but ultimately I felt that if I were in her position, I would want to know. I managed to find her on social media and sent her a message explaining who I was and asking if we could meet. She agreed, probably out of curiosity more than anything else. We arranged to meet at a park near her house, a neutral location where we could talk privately. The day of the meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. I arrived early and waited on a bench, rehearsing what I was going to say. When she arrived, I recognized her immediately from the photos I had seen. She looked nervous but determined. I'll never forget the look on her face when I told her everything. The shock, the pain, the anger. She didn't say much at first, just sat there absorbing the information. Then she started asking questions. How long it had been going on, if I had proof, if I knew about the pregnancies. I answered as honestly as I could, showing her the emails I had discovered. Her reaction was a mix of gratitude and devastation. She thanked me for having the courage to tell her, saying she had suspected something was off with Mike but couldn't prove it. Then she broke down, and I just sat with her, offering what little comfort I could. It was a surreal moment. Two strangers connected by the betrayal of the people we loved most. I haven't heard from her since that day, but mutual friends told me she confronted Mike and kicked him out of the house. I hope she finds the strength to move forward, whatever that means for her. I can't help but feel a strange connection to this woman I barely know. Both of US victims of the same betrayal. As for me, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment in a different part of the city. It's smaller than the place I shared with Anna, but it's mine. Moving in was bittersweet. I was excited for a fresh start, but seeing my belongings without Anna's mixed in was a stark reminder of how much had changed. It's strange living alone after so many years of sharing a space with Anna. The first few nights were the hardest. I'd wake up reaching for her, only to find an empty space beside me. But as the days passed, I started to appreciate the solitude. I can leave dishes in the sink without feeling guilty, watch whatever I want on TV, and spread out my work on the dining table without worrying about tidying up. Work has been a welcome distraction. I threw myself into a new project, working long hours to keep my mind occupied. My boss has been understanding, giving me space when I need it and challenging work when I want to stay busy. I'm grateful for the support of my colleagues, many of whom have become good friends over the years. My family and friends have been incredible throughout this whole ordeal. They've helped me move, listened to me vent, and dragged me out of the house when I needed it. My brother, in particular, has been my rock. He checks in on me daily and has been helping me navigate the legal aspects of separating my life from Anna's. We've grown even closer through this experience, and I'm thankful for his unwavering support. Speaking of Anna, she's respected my wishes and hasn't contacted me since our last meeting. I heard through mutual friends that she's moved in with her sister and is continuing therapy. Part of me hopes she finds peace and learns from this experience, but I know that's not my responsibility anymore. It's strange to think of her as part of my past now, when for so long she was central to my plans for the future. The hardest part has been dealing with the waves of emotion that hit unexpectedly. I'll be fine one moment, then something will remind me of Anna or our life together, and it's like a punch to the gut. The other day, I was grocery shopping and automatically reached for her favorite brand of yogurt. Took me a second to realize I didn't need to buy it anymore. These little moments catch me off guard and remind me of how intertwined our lives were. I've started to reconnect with old hobbies and interests that I had let slide during my relationship. I joined a local hiking group and have been exploring trails in the area. The physical exertion and beauty of nature have been therapeutic. Last weekend, we hiked to a waterfall I had always wanted to visit but never found the time for. Standing there, watching the water cascade down the rocks, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. I've also been spending more time with friends I had somewhat neglected while I was with Anna. My college roommate and I have started having weekly game nights just like we used to. It's been great to reconnect and remember who I was before my relationship became such a big part of my identity. My parents have been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. They call me every few days to check in, and I've been having Sunday dinners at their house. My mom always makes too much food, insisting on sending me home with leftovers. I think it's her way of making sure I'm eating properly. My dad, who's never been one for emotional conversations, has started inviting me to watch sports with him. We don't talk much, but his quiet presence is comforting. As I write this, I realize that while the pain is still there, it's not as sharp as it was before. I'm starting to see a future for myself that doesn't include Anna. And while that's scary, it's also exciting in a way. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that I had forgotten and exploring new possibilities that I hadn't considered before. I've even started thinking about dating again, though I know I'm not ready yet. The thought of trusting someone new is daunting, but I'm hopeful that when the time is right, I'll be able to open my heart again. To those who are going through similar situations, I want to say that it does get better. It's not easy, and there are days when it feels impossible, but keep pushing forward. Surround yourself with people who support you, be kind to yourself, and remember that you deserve happiness and trust in your relationships. There are still moments when I miss Anna, when I think about calling her or wonder what she's doing, but those moments are becoming less frequent. I'm learning to live with the pain and disappointment, to accept what happened without letting it define me. As I look towards the future, I'm focusing on personal growth. I've started reading self-help books about healing after betrayal and building self-esteem. I'm also considering taking some classes at the local community college, maybe learning a new skill or exploring a subject I've always been interested in. Thank you all again for your support and advice throughout this journey. Your words have been a source of strength and comfort. I may not update again for a while as I focus on healing and moving forward, but know that I appreciate each and every one of you. Here's to new beginnings and the strength to face whatever challenges life throws our way. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Am I wrong for being suspicious of my girlfriend's friend after she tried to seduce me? I, 30M, have been dating my girlfriend, Olivia, 23F, for the last 1 year. We met at a coffee shop near my office, which I used to frequent to get my morning coffee, and she worked there as a barista. I asked her out and she said yes. Things have been great so far, and I feel we are compatible in terms of what we like and want from a relationship. She has a group of 3 girlfriends she is close with. These girls are always very welcoming to me, but they seem very immature compared to my friends. One of the girls is Harper, 23F. Harper is awesome, and we get along well since we like the same video games and music. Recently, Olivia and I were talking about taking our relationship to the next stage, and I asked her to move in with me. She spends 4 to 5 nights a week at my place anyway, so I asked her to just move in. For some reason, her parents are the most excited about this, as she is finally moving out of their house. She also told her friends about the same. On Saturday, Olivia decided to stay back at her parents' house to pack some of her things. Harper messaged Olivia and me that she and her friends were downtown and if we wanted to hang out with her. Olivia was gone, but she told me it was okay if I wanted to go out for drinks with the girls. I had nothing to do and hence I joined them. It was all 3 of her friends and me, and we went to a few bars. We lost the other 2 girls midway, and it was just Harper and I. I was constantly messaging Olivia about what was going on as I started to get uncomfortable with the situation, as it was getting late. I told Harper that I would get an Uber for her to drop her home. She told me that she wanted to go dancing. At this point, she was visibly getting drunk. I called an Uber for her anyway. As we were leaving the bar, Harper grabbed my t-shirt and tried to kiss me. I immediately pulled back and told her that this was making me uncomfortable, and I would let it pass since she was drunk. She apologized to me. As we were waiting for the Uber, she again started getting handsy and told me, "Let's go back to your place, and no one needs to know." I snapped at her at this point and told her to please shut up until she got in the car. Finally, the Uber came and I got Harper to get in. She kept on apologizing to me and telling me, "Please don't tell Olivia." Finally, her Uber left, and I tracked on my phone to make sure she reached home. I asked Olivia to check with Harper's roommate as she got safely to her apartment. As I was walking home, I called Olivia and told her about what happened. Olivia was crying, and I was genuinely pissed at Harper's behavior. Olivia tried to call Harper at night, but her phone was going straight to her voicemail. In the morning, Olivia came home and told me, "Hey, it's all good. It was just a test." I was angry at this point and I asked Olivia to explain what was going on. So, Harper messaged Olivia in the morning that Olivia was really lucky and that I passed the test. I asked Olivia if she was involved in this, and she did not know that Harper was going to test me. According to Harper, she wanted to make sure that I was not a cheater before Olivia moved in with me. Hence, she wanted to see if I accept her advances. I told Olivia that Harper is full of it because she was drunk and there is no way she was thinking straight. Moreover, when I snapped at her, she apologized and told me not to tell you anything. Harper is just trying to cover for her mistake and is giving an excuse. Olivia thinks I'm overreacting. According to her, Harper is her best friend and will never betray her. Although the test was stupid and Harper should apologize to me, she was just looking for Olivia's best interest. Also, Olivia feels nothing happened, so I should not make a big deal of it. I just feel Olivia is dumb and cannot see that her friend tried to get her boyfriend to cheat. I just feel she is too immature to understand Harper's true intentions and is bothering me. I told her to stay away from Harper if she wanted us to have a happy relationship. Am I the odd one to tell Olivia to not believe Harper's lies? Or do you think Harper's story checks out and I am just overreacting? I have never heard of anyone hitting on their friend's boyfriend to test the relationship, and it seems like the most excuse. Update. I30M. Posted on Tuesday regarding my girlfriend. Olivia's 23F. Friend. Harper. 23F. Hitting on me last weekend and then playing it off that she was testing me if I would cheat on Olivia. Before I go to the update, let me address the issue that most of the comments were discussing. Yes, I am aware that there is a 7-year age gap between Olivia and me. It also does not help that I am a 6 feet 4 inches muscular dude, and she is a 5 feet 3 inches petite runner. I have dated girls my age, some girls slightly older than me and Olivia. I do not think maturity is a function of age, and I have dated girls my age who were way more childish than Olivia. Out of all my relationships, I've been the happiest in the last year with Olivia. She is not as academically gifted as I am, but she is ambitious and driven. She is a long-distance runner, runs 2 to 3 marathons per year, and is finishing her fitness training certifications. I am proud of her and how she takes care of herself. The relationship just works for us. Now for the update. Harper told Olivia that she was just testing me, and Olivia initially agreed with her explanation. We discussed it, and I told her my side of the story. I told her that Harper is bad news, but it's her choice if she wants to be friends with her. Olivia was more pissed at Harper that she did not tell her about the test beforehand and had her doubts about Harper's story. I decided to drop the issue since I do not want Olivia to be broken off from her friends group because of me. Olivia just couldn't get over the incident and kept on asking me for more details every day. Finally, yesterday we had a long discussion about it. I told her that testing someone's boyfriend is a very insecure thing to do. Doing it without telling Olivia was horrible, as she did try to kiss me and physically seduce me into coming to our apartment. My point was, if my friend ever tried to kiss Olivia and ask her to cheat on me, I would immediately drop that friend, if not do something worse. She understood that but kept on repeating, what if Harper was just acting convincingly and did something stupid but not evil? She told me that although Harper is very promiscuous, she would never try to steal someone's boyfriend. She also told me that Harper has a type of guy who she dates, and I am not the type of guy she would date. I don't want to admit it, but that did hurt my ego. Olivia just kept on repeating that we would never really know what Harper was thinking that night. She may be trying to test me, but got drunk and went too far. I told Olivia that maybe she should test Harper and see what was really in her mind. Olivia was confused but went with what I was saying. I told Olivia to message Harper that she was going to visit her parents' place over the weekend and ask her to meet for brunch on Sunday. Harper replied and said it sounded great, and they decided on a place to meet. After an hour, Olivia and I messaged Harper from my Snapchat with just a blank image and said, "Thinking about you." We waited for 10 minutes, and Harper replied with 2 topless bathroom selfies. Olivia was beyond mad at this point, but I told her to wait and see what happens next. Harper then replied, saying, "Hey, Olivia is gone for the weekend. Maybe I can show you this in person on Saturday." At this point, Olivia was just trying to keep it together. She snatched the phone from my hand, took a selfie of her face, and messaged it to Harper. Harper started blowing up Olivia's phone with missed calls and frantically messaging her. Her excuse was again, "I was right about your boyfriend. He is a cheat. I was testing him to see what was on his mind." Olivia did not reply to any of her messages, and it took a while to console her. I felt bad blowing up their friendship, but I knew what Harper was doing that night, and I felt she should not get away with it. Did I do something extremely immature for a 30-year-old guy? Yes. Did it feel good? Also, yes. I feel any person hitting on their friend's partner deserves this treatment, irrespective of their age. I don't know if Olivia and Harper would patch up in the future or how it will affect her friends group. I sometimes feel guilty for the fact that I went out for drinks with Harper and friends and that led to this whole situation. Olivia does not deserve to have her best friend betray her trust in this way. So, in the spirit of the subreddit, am I the OP for testing my girlfriend's friend who tried to test me? Comments where OP has replied. Comment. At least Olivia knows the truth about her friend now. So, are you and Olivia going forward with her plans to move in with you? You mentioned that in your original post. OP, yes, that was never off the table for me. I know it's easy to judge Olivia based on one incident. We have been dating for almost a year, and I'm excited for her to move in. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.